In this video, I'll be showing you how to combine the letters D, E, and F into a pretend word, similarly to how I did for A, B, and C, the cover of my book, Quilling Letters. The first thing to do to prepare your letters to join with other letters is to print out the page in my book and trim off the sides, leaving about ½ inch of white space on either side of the letter. So I've already done that for D, E, and F. So we can discard these two pieces. Then I've taken another sheet of 8.5 by 11 and drawn a line about 3 inches from the bottom. What we're going to do is lay these letters on top of this sheet, and the baseline that you see here, all we have to do is just line it up to this imaginary, like I guess it's a ruler if you would, and put the next one lining it up, and using a piece of tape to simply secure that in place. Now you've got all three letters together. Well, you can actually trim off this top part if you like. It doesn't need to be there anymore. And the bottom as well. Now, if you'd like to center this letters on your work surface, there's an easy way to figure out where is the center. You could use a ruler, of course, but actually if you fold it in half and look at it with light shining from behind and find out where those lines line up. I don't have a light source, so I'm going to imagine that this is where the this edge and this edge are lining up, and basically, and then make sure your baseline is matching that baseline and fold. Simple. There's your center line right there. So when you go to use it on your work surface and you're trying to find out where's that center line, this is an easy way to do that as well. Using a scoring tool, trace these letters onto your work surface. After that, it's time to design what you're going to quill. After outlining your letters, try to imagine how you'd like them to interact with one another. These two letters are very angular. There's no curved areas in it. This letter obviously lends itself to some arcs readily enough. So how do we get them to play with one another? Try to imagine drawing arcs that connect them together, have some quilled curls come out. It's always quite fun to have that happen. How to make movement with your eye amongst them all. I've introduced leaves in here, and I'll be showing how to do that later as well. Any kind of element that you'd like to have happen, I'm sure you can make it come alive. Now you can prepare all your quilling strips, folding along the corners and softening any curves that are needed. For any letter with an inside shape, it's best to tackle that first, because otherwise it's harder to glue if the outside outline is in your way. Watch my video on the letter B to see how to form the letter D. The letter E is very long and my strip isn't long enough. Not a big deal though, because it's easy to join strips on a corner by using my plastic card as a guide. Once you've done the letter E, the letter F is even easier. Remember, you don't have to glue it all at once. You can dip portions of the letter into the glue, working your way a segment at a time. That's how I do it. I've mentioned before that where I'm filming, I don't have the best light. I actually have to have diffused light, so it's actually hard for me to see my work up close. And I see now that I've backed away that this area here is not quite straight. So I'm going to show you a method that I use for fixing quilling strips that have already been glued down. I wouldn't recommend this, obviously. You would only save this if you really had to do it out of an emergency or really have no other choice. I could redo the whole thing, but I'd rather just kind of keep going with these tutorials as quickly as I can. So what I've done is taken an X-Acto knife and tried to separate the quilling strip from the work surface, and I don't know if you can see this, it leaves it a little scuffy on here, so I try to clean off as much as I can and use the back of my nail to smoothen it down. Hopefully some coils that are in that area will kind of mask that whole thing. So in case of emergency, this is what I would do. Now I'm ready to fill my letters with scrolls. I'm going to fast forward this part because it is rather slow, and also give you a voiceover to explain my process. When you're ready to glue the inside scrolls, hover the strip above the letters to judge the distance. Pinch the strip where it meets the letter, then use scissors to trim the length needed. Then I put that newly trimmed strip back into place to make sure it's the exact length I want. Sometimes I'll end up cutting too much or too little and need to retrim yet again, or even make a new strip. I realize it may seem like quite a bit of repetitive checking, but it's worse when you've dipped your strip into glue only to see it didn't quite fit. When connecting an arc that continues across letters, I don't glue anything right away. I confirm the arc is smooth first. Sometimes I may need to remake a segment of that arc. It really is worth the effort. Be sure to glue not only the bottom edge, but also the sides. This way, when it touches the letters, you're going to have a lot more strength with those connections. So when I'm deciding which swooshes and arcs to start with first on a letter, I generally try to start with the largest swooshes because it kind of cuts up the space. So what's left over, that's where I start to fill it in with the smaller pieces. I find it's harder to work my way the other way around. If I were to do the smaller pieces first, you're kind of constraining yourself when it comes to the larger arcs that go across the letters. I hope that makes sense. To create the leaves on my DEF and ABC projects, I'm going to soften the outside color of the leaf, and then I'm going to kind of measure against my drawing just to get a sense of how large the leaf I want it to be. Then I'm going to fold in half and snip. Now to create that little tuck right there, all I do is open this guy up and rub near that fold. Now the paper has that memory there, you just kind of have to remind it what direction you want it to go in. And you can always reinforce a direction by just kind of softening that petal a little bit more, or rub against your finger. And there's the leaf. So then to glue, we're going to do what I normally do, which is to kiss my glue and then I'm going to put that end right against my plastic card, then bring this end up against that and glue so it's a nice tight corner. This is where you gotta be a bit patient. Now we can work on the inside seam of the leaf. I'm going to soften my contrasting color. And then I'm going to place it above the leaf to gauge the length. And then using my fingernail, I'm just going to mark the length it needs to be and trim it. Then I test the length in there and see if there's anything else I want to change. If not, then I'll pour some new glue and dip both sides, both ends into the glue. And slot it in place. I don't know about you, but I used to love playing Operation. Sometimes this kind of reminds you of that game. You just hold that in place until it's dry. And then from there you can decide if you want to add some strips to delineate more veins from the leaf. And again, same technique, you just kind of place it above, eyeball, snip, and just place it in where you want it to go.